While Ukrainian airstrikes continue in a fairly high intensity and show some success, the emergence of North Korean ballistic missiles has turned a problem even bigger that the Ukrainian air defense has with ballistic missiles. That the fact that Iran is probably going to add to Russia's stockpile is going to make the problem even bigger. We'll talk about this as well as about the developments along the front line where Russia is still in the offensive, as well as about political repercussions and political circumstances, and about troop generation from both sides in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. We'll start off in the north of the front line here in the area of Kupiansk. Their intensive weather is currently hindering Russian offensive activities. Still, though, over the last few days, there were attacks reported basically along most parts of the front line, whether it be here in Sinkivka, in the direction of Petropavlivka, close to Persho-Travneve, or for instance, Yahitne. We see the Yahitne-Ivanivka. We see the continuation of Russian attacks along the front line. In the south, they had a fairly significant success here close to Terni. I have some geolocalization here that show us where the Russians were actually seen, and it actually is even worse than what we can see along the UA control map, because while we have Russian positions here and here, there's also one further up in this direction. If we look at this map here, we can see that opening, that like a C with that particular hook, which we can see here. And then obviously more or less directly north of that tip here, we see them in the next tree line, and that would be here. So the Russians have been spotted here and have been shelled by Ukrainian artillery here. They are creeping closer towards Terni, which is an important logistics hub and essential for the lines of communication, especially in these regions further to the northeast. So the situation is getting unpleasant for the Ukrainians. Ukrainians themselves say the Russians have a 5-to-1 superiority in this, especially in the area of Crimean, so further gains are to be expected fairly soon. South of the Seversky Donetsk, we have fighting around Spirne. Spirne, increasingly, the Russians are pushing more into the town. Every claim so far that the town is already captured is unconfirmed as of yet, though. So while we see intensity in the Russian attacks towards this direction, we do have visible and proven successes by the Russians west of Bakhmut. First, here at Bodanivka, they advanced further towards the town itself. We have some geolocalizations here as well that you can see on this map. We see them both at this opening here as well as to its southeast. This was the first one, and as you can see it here on the map, this is here and up here already. So they are pushing further up towards Bodanivka, almost bypassing it in the south. A correction from my side, it wasn't here, it was actually here. So the Russian positions are in this, what is still on the map in the gray zone. I cannot confirm that the Russians have a permanent presence here, but we see them advancing further to the west in this direction. Here at Kromove, they had some significant success as well over the last few days. They advanced further into the roughly southwestern direction of Ivanivske, pushing further here and obviously increasing the pressure towards Chasiv Yar. Further south at Klishivka, fighting is still reported, but I cannot confirm that there has been any significant change in territory over the last few days. At Avdiivka, we have some changes being reported and confirmed as well. The Russians have advanced in these directions here, and we see massive attacks by the Russians. These advances in the two tree lines were already reported in the last situation report, and while there are some claims and some new fresh geolocalizations of Russian positions, I, at least from my part, do not see them in positions where I haven't seen the Russians before already. So we have increased increased or continued intensity of the Russian attacks directly northwest of Avdiivka, but as of now, at least here, I cannot confirm any significant change. At Stepove, fighting is still very intensive, but I cannot confirm any change in territory either. But here to the direct east of the coke plant, which is here, and here's the waste heap, we have a significant advance here in this in the area of the Dachas. That is geo-confirmed. You see this these two lakes, and when we watch them, so they are basically already here in this area, at least if I am not completely mistaken, which I am not. So you see this here directly. This is where the Russians were latest spotted. We see it here in the gray zone. So this might mean a permanent presence. This might mean that they had to withdraw from that. But we see them advancing south along those lakes here continuously over the last few days. Other than that, no change that I can confirm here in the southeast, in the industrial area and the outskirts, or the basically the border of the city itself. Heavy fighting is being reported here towards Siverne. But I do not see any change in territory. And in Pervomaiske, the fighting is also continuing. The Ukrainians had a minor local counterattack that was successful, where they pushed the Russians back a few meters in this direction. Important, though, because it will allow the line of communication towards the southeasternmost positions to be fully open continuously, whereas before it was threatened, at least for the moment. Other than that, further south, fighting is being reported, whether it be around Marinka, heavy attacks towards Pobieda, heavy attacks towards Novomikhailivka. It seems to be some lull in fighting south of Velika Novosilka, and we have fighting obviously south of Orikhiv as well. There I find Russian mill bloggers claiming that the Russians took additional positions at Novoprokopivka. No confirmation in change in territory though from my side, so I can basically not confirm that the Russians had any success. But obviously the strategic initiative is fully on the Russian side as of now. That doesn't mean that the Ukrainians still don't hold some interesting positions here in Krinky. We still have the continued presence of the Ukrainians, but we do not see any change that can be observed at this point. Ukrainians are reporting 2-digit attacks daily on their positions inside of Krinky, but the Russians say the Ukrainians have a high concentration of drones and of electronic warfare in this positions and along the Dnipro here, which makes their own attempts more difficult. Though I found some Russian mill bloggers claiming that they increasingly have it easier with the electronic warfare, either by taking out Ukrainian electronic warfare positions or by potentially getting better equipment. At least we have claims now from the Russian that the problem in regards to electronic warfare is getting smaller in this region. I cannot confirm it, obviously, when the Russians claim something like this. There is some rumor in the Russian mill blogger sphere that the Ukrainians are currently preparing a massive offensive over the Dnipro. I do not find much, though. The conclusions are some at the middle towards the end of this month. Supposedly a huge number of Ukrainian troops are supposed to cross the Dnipro somewhere. This doesn't seem to make too much sense, though. I think it's nonsense, but we have talked about it now, so in case it happens, we all know that I was wrong and the Russian mill bloggers somehow received secret informations after all. On the Crimean Peninsula, we have almost daily, or I think daily, attacks now by the Ukrainians. Ammunition depots, command posts, air defense is being struck. The Ukrainians supposedly also attempted to strike the Crimean Bridge. Whether to the degree to which they have been successful is unclear. We have some Ukrainian claims, obviously, of successes, but that doesn't mean we have visual evidence, except, for instance, in this case here. Here we see an ammunition depot that was hit, where we can see on the satellite pictures clearly the craters where munitions have hit, and at the same time we have a Russian mill blogger confirming that at the airbase of Saki there was a successful attack. We have the image here that they are saying from today, where there was a fresh attack again on the Crimean Peninsula with Storm Shadow or Scalp, with decoy missiles, as well as with Neptune and drones. And they say in Saki an administration building was hit, but they claim it was empty, even though obviously we do not know whether it was actually empty, but we do know that they admit that the airbase was hit. At the same time, we have reports that the Russians are now flying permanently A-50. I think the NATO name is Mainstay. Those are basically Russian AVACs, so air reconnaissance radar planes. They are now having them permanently circling above the Crimean Peninsula because of the intensity of the Ukrainian attacks, as obviously the earlier they spot either missiles or the planes shooting them, the more time they have to react to alert their own air force, their own air defense systems, and the more time might be for a MiG-31 fighter jet to an interceptor to intercept the Ukrainian planes. That's why we've seen them being deployed here on the Crimean Peninsula to hunt down the Ukrainian Sukhoi 24 that are flying those Scalp and Storm Shadow attacks. Generally, we have claims by the Ukrainian side that the Russian concentration now would be taken that the Russian focus is supposedly going to be the taking of Kupiansk, as it would collapse parts of this front line here. Here is one of the most important river crossings over the Oskil, and obviously a clear transportation hub and for the lines of communication, absolutely essential. This point, the judging of that isn't too clear though. We have we can expect the Russians to have reserves. The fighting there hasn't been too massive over the last few weeks, but that whether the reserves will actually be sufficient is more than doubtful. And we have some contradicting claims by the Ukrainian side. Some expect a massive offensive, others say no, the Russians are too weak to actually seriously threaten Kupiansk in the near future. We'll have to see which side has a point here, but I guess we can expect more intensive attacks towards Kupiansk over the next days and weeks. Then we have the usage of short-range ballistic missiles by Russia that were identified to be of North Korean production. We talked about this in the past already, that North Korea had sent trainers to Russia, and the only reason to send trainers is that they have to teach the Russians to use a new weapon system. For ammunition, obviously, trainers would not be needed. It was expected that Ukraine will face North Korean ballistic missiles, and now the confirmation is here. At the same time, this is a massive problem for the Ukrainians. The majority of their air defense is incapable of intercepting them. This is what they can use is basically Patriot, SAMPT, and their S-300V versions, whereas the S-300V are being considered to be not highly effective against ballistic missiles. And the next question would be, how many missiles do they even have left to use them against this? So they have a limited amount of air defense systems, whereas all the rest is basically useless against a ballistic missile because of the arc it's attacking from and because of the speed it's diving onto the ground. At the same time, it's also being considered that Russia might also receive Iranian missiles, which would increase the problem as well. And we've seen it in the past that while locally the Ukrainians can claim a high rate of interception, especially around Kiev, where we know that at least one Patriot battery is stationed, at other parts they seem to be incapable of intercepting them, which has shown a higher success rate by the Russians. And at the same time, even the S-300 and S-400 air defense systems that are being used in a ground-to-ground attack role cause the same problems for the Ukrainians, as their missiles supposedly are fast enough as well once they strike to cause problems for regular air defense systems as well. So while the Ukrainians are having trouble intercepting ballistic missiles, Russia is not only buying them from North Korea and likely from Iran, but according to estimates, they are currently probably producing 42 Iskander and 4 Kinjal a month, both ground-launched and air-launched air-launched ballistic missiles, and this production rate might obviously rise over the next coming months and years. So this is going to be a serious problem for the Ukrainian air defense and for the Ukrainian strategic targets for the months and years to come, where a fast fix doesn't seem likely, as these high-end air defense systems are in limited supply. When it comes to troop generation, we have a new decree from Vladimir Putin, whereas he made it easier and regulated the naturalization of foreigners if once they signed a yearly contract inside of a special military operation with the military. So if the country is in a special military operation and you as a foreigner sign up for at least a year, you will get Russian citizenship. Your family members, whether it's children, spouse, or even parents, will also receive Russian citizenship, which obviously is meant to entice foreigners to sign up, to allow their whole family to get the citizenship, basically risking one member of the family to give the whole lot the citizenship. This is probably the intention with that, especially with parents also receiving that. And this is supposedly going to happen within a month. So 1 month after signing that, they are already eligible to receive the Russian citizenship. At the same time, Kyrgyzstan has again sentenced one of its citizens to years in prison for fighting in the war in Ukraine, according to its mercenary laws. This is at least the third case in Central Asia of one of the former Soviet states where citizens were sentenced for fighting in Ukraine. This time it was for 5 years. One compatriot of this Kyrgyz citizen was sentenced before to 10 years in prison for fighting. At the same time, obviously giving them Russian citizenship would prevent the extradition of them, would prevent the deportation. So everyone fighting for Russia is safer from being prosecuted in his original home. According to Ukrainian sources, the Russians are preparing to conscript and register for conscription 17-year-old Ukrainian men inside of the occupied territory. Supposedly starting on March 2024, the registration will start and they will be treated as Russian citizens and being used on the front line. Obviously, the Ukrainian twist is, and the Ukrainian spin is, that they are going to be used as cannon fodder. Whether or not, I have no way of confirming whether the Ukrainians are right in this, that the Ukrainian citizens inside of the Russian armed forces will be particularly wasted in attacks. But in the end, I guess it's not too wrong to say that probably the whole Russian army is being used as cannon fodder. At least it seems like that in the attacks we've recently observed. Excuse me. The spokesperson of the Ukrainian Air Force says Russia right now only has the capacity to produce 2 to 3 Sukhoi 34 fighter bombers a year because of Western sanctions and the difficulty to get the necessary parts. Whether that's true or not, I have no clue, but that would obviously mean that the few weeks ago when Ukraine shot down at least 4 Sukhoi 34 within a week, that would basically be more than a yearly production lot that was taken down by the Ukrainians. In the political sphere, we have Ramzan Kadyrov again doing something very weird. He offered 20 Ukrainian prisoners of war in exchange if Western nations stop the sanctions against him and his family. Again, I guess trading prisoners of war for personal gain, and that was what some military bloggers mentioned as well, who were outraged that Kadyrov is trying to use Ukrainian prisoners of war for personal usage, for personal gains. At the same time, a Russian court has sentenced YouTube to reinstate 4 channels of the state-run TV station 5TV. They have to be activated again before they were deactivated because of violations of terms of service in regards to the war in Ukraine. And if YouTube doesn't do it, they are facing a fine of roughly $1,000 a day each day where they don't reinstate them. How YouTube is going to react is obviously going to be interesting, because at some point they will have to make a choice whether they are going to reinstate all of those or leave Russia altogether. But there might be a way of maybe restricting the access to Russia. We'll have to see how YouTube is going to react to that. And finally, we have international support. 10 Marder IFV are confirmed from Germany two mine clearing tanks, 30 scanners for drones, and 155mm grenades, as well as Patriot and Iris-T air defense missiles, and a Skynex air defense system was also delivered to Ukraine. That's basically Rheinmetall's new version of the Gepard. It's a 35mm autocannon air defense system that is highly modern and is meant to attack everything from small drones up to cruise missiles and planes, at least as if they are flying low enough for a AAA to hit them. That was already it from me for now. If you like this report, please give it a thumbs up. That's really great for the algorithm. Leave a comment what do you think about the current situation. If you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. By the way, the donation campaign I ran on my German channel netted probably more than $75,000, which will be sufficient to pay for probably 3 ambulances that are going to be delivered to Ukraine during this year as soon as they've been found and bought, as obviously the focus will be on used ones. But some of you helped contribute with this, even though the focus of it was on my German channel. So thank you very much, and I'll put it in the community tab once it has happened, so you can see what happened with the money some of you donated. Thank you very much to this, and if you want to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much in this regard as well to everyone who has already donated. And that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.